the first question is, you know, why are we even having this conference? Why do we need to? I mean, there's so much information. We have the internet, there's tons of doctors. And I guess the question I'd like to ask is, what is the state of America's health? I mean, is things just the same as in 1970? Has anything changed? Are we doing just as well? I mean, 2021, where do we stand? Because a lot of people are excited about the stock market's up, technology's great, Apple's got lots of new phones, and a lot of people are excited about the new breakthroughs. So where in actual reality of health, what is the state of America's health, and how does it compare to the past? Let's get that as a baseline.
Yeah, we want to state the obvious. You want to set the stage? Go ahead.
No, go ahead. You go first.
Well, I wish I could say back in 1970 when I was a third-year med student on the first Earth Day. I remember I was a third-year med student at the University of Illinois in Chicago. And I was aware of the patients I was seeing in outpatient clinic. Many of them were a bit on the heavy side, saw lots of high blood pressure, diabetes, clogged arteries. Well, fast forward almost 50 years now of medical practice, and I wish I could say that Americans really picked up the ball and improved their health on an individual and national level. But alas, so we seem to have gone in the opposite direction. We got seduced by a life of comfort and processed foods filled with fat and salt and sugar that we sit on the couch and shovel in by the handful. And as a result, here we are in 2021, and we are more overweight and obese than ever. High blood pressure is rampant. Type 2 diabetes is, we're seeing it now in children. And every 30 seconds, someone grabs their chest and falls over with a heart attack. Every other one of them dies. And cancer of breast, uterus, prostate are really fearsome, as is still smoking and lung cancer. So our entire health picture as a nation certainly has not gotten better. We're barreling towards a real unsustainable situation, both medically, biologically, financially, and ethically, really. But in that bleak landscape, there are some flickers of hope, and there's no question that plant-based nutrition is firmly woven into the fabric at this point of awareness of what people need to do. More and more people are adopting more and more plant-based foods into their diet, whether they call themselves vegetarian or vegan or not. And the medical specialties begrudgingly are starting to recognize there's something to this nutrition stuff, something to this plant-based stuff. And the cardiology journals will have a plant-based article burble up, and the oncologists and pediatrics and allergies and dermatology and gastroenterology is starting to show in all the specialties because they're all treating dietary related diseases. And the public is sick and tired of being sick and tired. They're demanding that the doctors know more about nutrition. And the whole system is so creaking under pain for acute, after the cow has left the barn, procedures of bypasses and stents, that even the insurance companies are looking for ways to keep people healthier and maybe not put out so much money. So there's glimmers of hope. There's little wisps and threads of promising ideas and possibilities. But as a nation, and the COVID pandemic certainly brought out, we are, the COVID virus loves people who are obese and diabetic and hypertensive, and sure had ripe pickings when it came to the Western society's populations for that, and really smartened up a lot of folks, I hope. So we still have a lot of work to do, and Dr. Popper and I in the trenches here trying to help people both one at a time and on a larger educational level. I think are still more determined than ever. There's nothing else to do but keep educating and keep working and setting a good example and offering people hope and guidance. And so, and Steve, that's what this conference is about. So we really appreciate your invitation to address your audience.
Thank you.
Yeah, I echo everything that you said. I think that definitely I would love to report that everybody's eating well and caught on and that sort of thing. I would add to it another dimension that goes to some of what we do in my office. We've always felt that if you don't improve your diet and lifestyle habits, that there's no health without doing that. I mean, you can only mitigate if you're not prepared to do that. And I've always felt that anybody, doctor or otherwise, who says diet doesn't matter, the average adult puts 1 ton of food through their body every year. So it's almost incomprehensible that you could think that that wouldn't matter one way or another, good or bad, right? But the broader issue is the healthcare system, which is incredibly broken and has gotten incredibly worse, particularly in the last year. And when I talk about the healthcare system, I talk about everything from the incessant testing for no reason at all, the overprescribing of drugs, the withholding of information about things. I mean, it has always bothered me that in order to be a mortgage broker, you have to understand it's a felony to not disclose everything to a mortgage borrower, right? If you do it enough times, you actually go to jail. And you can be a medical doctor and not tell patients that this treatment doesn't extend your life by a day, or that, and you're not required to do that. And there's no real penalty for not doing that. And so I think that we tend to sometimes, those of us on this side of the issue, beat up people a little bit for not taking better care of themselves, but they're not properly informed, And I wanted to share this with you. My mother was sick for the latter third of her life, and I could never get her to listen to me. So those of you out there who your family won't listen to you, some of us don't do any better who are in this field. But one thing that I do know, she sure did listen to doctors, and she listened to them until they killed her, really, with overtreatment and drugs. And I am almost certain, I would bet my net worth on it, that if a man or a woman in a white coat had said to my mother, Eleanor, I'm not prescribing any more drugs, you're not having any more procedures, none of this stuff is helping you, and you need to change your diet and take off that weight and the whole, I don't know what she would have done, but I do know this: she would have listened. She would have at least listened. She didn't listen to me, but she would have listened to them. And so this is still going on. My mother died in 2012. This still goes on every single day. Over testing, over medicating, too many procedures, and not enough focus on the right things. And then there really is no consequence for this behavior. And I think that's the only way this is going to change, is if we get to the place where there are consequences for not doing some of the right things. And so I think education, you mentioned education, I think that's the key. And I'm convinced that consumer education is the key. The consumers can be really powerful, and go to their doctors and tell them what the plan's going to be. And I'm seeing more of that going on. And then I have to say, this is something I want to share, because I also think it's important to focus on the bright spots too. So it used to be that when people we were working with would go back to their gastroenterologist and say, listen, I don't want to take Humira for my IBD, I'm going to do something else. The first thing they would do is call us quacks. And the second thing they would do is it's irresponsible and you're going to die if you don't do it. And we're seeing probably 30% less of that kind of behavior now. And so I think I agree with you. I think there's some waking up going on, which is good to see. And I think part of that is learning that diet and lifestyle are important. I think part of it is the medical profession has been beat up a little bit on lack of respect for patients, right? Which we wouldn't tolerate in any other field. Like if a realtor said, buy this house or I'm not going to help you move into one, people would walk out of they'd walk down the driveway and drive off, right? So I think people are starting to find their voice. They're starting to take a little more control of their health. The message is getting through to the health professions that they have to be more respectful. And I think if we just keep going in this direction, we're going to get where we want to go. I'm 64 years old. I just want to be around long enough for it to happen, right? And I agree. Thank you, Steve, for giving all of us a way to reach people, because education to the masses is the key. And I think you have some of the broadest reach of anybody in this field.
Well said.
Good. Next question. Um, I'd like to know what you would both like to tell us about the last 16 months of COVID. Let's actually, what are the facts that are absolutely clear, no confusion? I know there's a lot of people with different opinions, different thoughts, different beliefs, but is there anything that is emphatically clear that we should all understand and have learned from the last 16 months about COVID? Is there anything else we should learn about how to protect ourselves from not getting it? Is there anything that you want to say that you believe is pretty much clear, hardcore information? And I'm saying clear, hardcore because there's so many people with so many different thoughts and attitudes, and we're not really picking sides on anything. We want to know the truth. So from all your research, everything you know, is there anything you want to share with our audience from everything you know about the last, since, February of 2020 until now, about COVID that you think we should be aware of?
I know Dr. Popper's got some very strong feelings that I'll be very interested in hearing. I'll just lay out the basic foundation that we know to be true. My heart still aches for the missed opportunity back a year ago, February. How wonderful it would have been if our health professionals got on TV, looked right at the camera and said, look, this virus tears up people that are obese, diabetic, hypertensive, got a lot of comorbidities. Look, you're going to be hunkered down for the next 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, whatever it is. Use this time, start eating healthy, start exercising, start dealing with your life situation to help reduce stress, emerge from this tunnel leaner, healthier, more resistant to disease, and smarter about how to navigate in our society. And if you do get it, hopefully, it won't be a terrible ordeal for you. And the advice is still true. And however, we still haven't returned to the pre-COVID society that we had. Boy, how we took that for granted. But even now, for the next 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, again, knowing what you know now and all the wonderful things that people are learning at this conference, use this time. Go into your kitchen, do the plastic bag commando move. Open the fridge, have an honest look about what's in there, and the fried chicken and the mayonnaise and the junk oils and all the processed foods, and look up at the cat up in the pantry there, and the cookies and the chips and the schmips in the bag. Close the bag and give it to whoever you like the least, but get it out of your house. Stop buying more of it, and man, start eating those salads and soups and veggies. Get outside and walk every day. Get health going in your life, and the virus will be what it's going to be. But you, at least, will emerge from this not only more resistant to the virus, but more resistant to getting a heart attack, a stroke, or prostate cancer, breast cancer, Crohn's, whatever it is. So the message that doctors have been giving since the beginning of time: get yourself healthy. But the COVID has really put an urgency to that, and the same advice holds today as it did back a year ago, February. So let food be thy medicine, and the same lifestyle be your medicine. Best health insurance I know
of. I want to say a couple of things. I think, first of all, I echo everything you said. I think that we've had a missed opportunity here. I also think that one of the terrible things about COVID, and Steve, you asked what I think, and I'm going to tell you what I think, but I want to frame this a little bit. I have had some very strong opinions about this, but what I did something a little bit different. I have armies of attorneys and epidemiologists and virologists and public health officials and public health professors and mathematicians and statisticians, because I'm suing everybody. I think everybody knows that by now. We filed a lawsuit against, our goal is to file a lawsuit against everybody involved in this. And so this isn't really a matter of opinion. It's a matter of sorting through factual information using a filter. And we've always done that, by the way. We've tried to get away from the he said, she said, this study, that study, somebody says, the expert says, and say, listen, if you're going to play football, you have to have rules of the game. You can't just run up and down the football field for an hour and then at the end say, let's sit down and try to figure out who won. Well, so the quarters are 15 minutes and you have to, the first down's 10 yards. And if you're going to kick a field goal, it has to go through the posts, right? So you start applying that here, where we just look at factual information and filter it objectively. And it's very clear that what we're dealing with is a form of medical tyranny that's been escalating for a very long time. And I want to point out some things I know are a little bit controversial, but I don't think we can leave them off the table. Medical tyranny is when a state says you have to give your child 57 vaccines before you can enroll her in school. That's medical tyranny. Parents should be making that decision. Medical tyranny is when a psychiatrist says you must give your 5-year-old Risperdal, or we're going to call Child Protective Services because he has a behavior problem. I think parents know what to do for their kids and force medicating a 5-year-old. This goes on all over the country every day. It's been going on for decades, right? So what we're seeing right now is the full explosion of this, where the medical system has just gone berserk. And it is imposed, the cure cannot be worse than the disease. I think that's something all people in public health should adhere to. But the cure has been worse than the disease. The Centers for Disease Control head, Robert Redfield, last year testified in front of Congress that 25% of all children in the United States, adolescents, were considering suicide at one point in time or the other. That is not a wake-up call for us to do something different. And nothing different has happened. In other words, this guy makes an announcement to the United States of America on national television. And everybody keeps doing the same thing that led to that. It's unconscionable. And the worst part about it is that I think, by our estimation, about 2/3 of the country agrees with me, and about 1/3 of the country doesn't, which means that at some point in time when there really is a bad crisis, bubonic plague has hit, you walk out of your house, you're going to be dead on the sidewalk. I sure would like to know about it. If that was happening, I'd stay home. But I think what people are going to do is say, you know what? That was one big false alarm. And trust in public health has completely gone. And that is extraordinarily concerning to me, because trust in public health is a necessity for society. So we have a lot of work to do. We've got to get to the bottom of this. We've got to make sure that these things never happen again. And along the way, we need to tell the truth about this, because what are we doing putting, the school systems around here put 2 masks on children. The death rate in children right now, the death rate in children for COVID is so low that it registers as 0%, statistically speaking. So what are we doing putting 2 masks on children and making them want to commit suicide? I'm just interested in the answer to that question. So what we have here is a bad situation all around. And to your point, Dr. Klaper, there are more people who are fatter now, back to drinking alcohol now, back to taking drugs now, back to eating cookies and potato chips to just try to keep themselves sane. Now, everything that you talked about has gone backwards during this period of time, because even people who know better are doing worse because of the stress from this situation. So this is a colossal failure of public health. And I think that what we have to do, again, is apply the rules. I've told people, I posted the information. It's in my book, COVID Operation. It's all there for everybody to see. So let's have a discussion about factual information so that we can do better next time, because we can't do any worse. We have to do better than this next time.
Okay, next question. There's a lot of people on this call. There's a lot on this panel and watching this, and there's going to be a lot of people who watch the replay of it. They are not all people who eat a whole food plant-based diet. There are people of all types with all different levels of interest in food. And they don't have, some of them care about the environment, some care about animals, but in general, there's a lot of different people. For the people who are not thinking about the environment at this moment, for the people who are not thinking about the animals, who are saying, I love food, I love the way it tastes, what are we actually saying is the benefit to their health of a whole food plant-based diet that you advocate? In other words, what are you saying in terms of weight loss? What are you saying in terms of blood sugar? What are you saying in terms of high blood pressure? Is this going to avoid heart disease? Is it going to avoid cancer? In other words, it's not going to make people grow a third arm. It doesn't make people grow hair back. There are limitations, so I don't want to exaggerate the benefits. Tell everyone, the reason we don't smoke cigarettes is the cost benefit's very low. You whatever benefit you get, it's clearly doesn't outweigh the negative that you get very sick from it. So when it comes to a whole food plant-based diet, for someone who says, I love my regular food, I have no interest in changing, what are we saying? They're obviously not believing there's enough benefit. So not the hype, but what is the study say? What is going to happen to someone who for the next 5 years switches to a whole food plant-based diet? Are they going to not have heart attacks? Are they going to have a blood sugar that's good? Are they going to lose weight? Are they going to prevent cancer? Are they going to prevent Alzheimer's? What can you say from your research and results that you get from a whole food plant-based diet, and what do you not get? And then everyone could decide for themselves whether they want to get involved in this. But for all those people that say, I like chicken, I like fish, I like dairy, I like eggs, what are we selling? What are we promising? We're not selling and promising anything, but what are we suggesting that the research supports they will benefit and get if they follow your advice?
You're looking for the magic words to speak and the amulet to wave over the patient's forehead. And yes, doctor, and I see the light. I will now become a whole food vegan. My high school basketball coach said, you gotta wanna, unless you want something, nothing happens. And whether it's driving for a basket on the court, or deciding to get your body healthier. And the person who's, I like my chicken, I like my steak, they don't want them at this point. Now, life has a way of working their way into their life situation and kind of increasing their wanna meter a little bit when they notice that chest pain or that big pot belly or the loss of vision in their eye temporarily. They start getting signals that all is not well. And so, if they find their way to Dr. Popper's office or my office, there's already somebody's been working on them. They've got, the doors open a little bit. They wouldn't be sitting there. They wouldn't be tuned into this conference. So they have some concern about their health. And then, this is when the art of medicine comes in. Dr. Popper knows well. Everybody's different. You got to meet them where they're at. Why you got to find out their why. Why are you sitting here? Why? What is it that makes you want to be at all interested in eating healthier or whatever they're doing? Well, this chest pain. My father dropped dead last week. My aunt just got diagnosed with colon cancer, and it's in our family. Whatever it is, then that's where you meet them and you talk for real about it and how their current diet is playing a major role in bringing that very thing they fear to reality. I invite your viewers to go back to the presentation I gave yesterday on making disease reversal work for you. And I talked about the concept of the red tide, which is what floods through our tissues hour after hour. Every meal based on meats and dairy and oils and sugars and processed foods sends this tide of molecules, oxidized cholesterol, reactive aldehydes, carcinogens, mutagens, pesticides, herbicides, new 5-GC endotoxins. This tide of toxic molecules sweeps through our tissues meal after meal, day after day, month after month, year after year. And as time goes by, it creates the diseases that we're looking at. These are not random events. These diseases, obesity, high blood pressure, diabetes, they don't fall out of a tree on you at age 50. They're created meal by meal, argument by argument, stressful day by stressful day, cigarette after cigarette, drink after drink. The steady onslaught of insults to our body eventually damages the machinery. fortunately, it's a self-repairing machinery. If we give it the chance, it's stunning how much the body can compensate and come back from these injuries. But first, the person's got to see their role in the disease. It's not a matter of blaming someone to point out to a smoker who's scorching their lungs 20, 30 times a day and now is short of breath or coughing up blood, that the two have something to do with each other, not blaming, it's just biology. And so you explain the biology. I spend a lot of time drawing pictures out of my office about what their diet is doing, or the smoking, or the drinking, or whatever. And then we start finding substitutions. You like spaghetti? Yeah, how about you can make a great pasta primavera with vegetables instead of meatballs. You can order the bean chili instead of the beef chili. You start artfully modifying. Oh, I could eat that, and they hopefully will encounter some really delicious plant-based food, and slowly, especially as the weight starts coming off and the joints stop hurting, and the skin clears up and the blood pressure comes down, and get them off some pills. Then they start seeing the whole picture and the role that diet and lifestyle plays in it. But everybody's different. And that's one reason why this conference is so important, and what Dr. Popper is doing is so important, because as much as she and I love clinical medicine and helping people one at a time, it's retail medicine. It's too slow. You've got to reach thousands, millions of people with this message. And that's why these conferences play such a key role at this point, because you can reach thousands of people and they can replay it again and again. So I'm very grateful for this, a very high form of medicine we're practicing here. So again, you want that, yeah, but you can't count people out how many times, and I'm sure Dr. Popper knows that a husband and wife will come in, the wife's got concerned about her weight or whatever, and the guy's sitting there and he's not listening, he's looking all around, and you figure this guy is never gonna change. And you see him 3 months later, and the guy comes back, he doesn't recognize him. He's lost 30 pounds. Hey, doc, I decided to try that food you're talking about. And gee, I got off my pills, and my internist can't believe it. And you never know what people hear. You never know who's ready. The best you can do is offer the truth as lovingly as you can, offer as much support, get plant-based dietitians involved, get health coaches involved, give them classes, cooking classes, show them videos. Those who want this much, if they want a little bit, you can make it enough so they make the key changes they have to. So that's the art of medicine. It's a service endeavor, and it's changing in the 21st century as we're all sitting in different places in the country. But the message is the same. Health comes from healthy living. And it's a matter of how you're going to help people help do that, and that's what all of us on this call are about.
Yeah, I agree. And you made a couple comments, Dr. Klaper, that I think are important when you were talking about the bean chili instead of the beef chili. I think a lot of people's preconceived notions about this is they're going to live on tree bark and acorns, or I'm going to eat salads and fruit. And they think about that. It's so appalling to them. And I think that we have to really, and I think a lot of people in our field do a very good job of making people fall in love with the food. And that's part of it, because I think that the very first social experience that humans had together was sharing a meal. And so we can't just make food, calories and nutrients on a plate. It doesn't matter. Just fill your belly and go back to work, right? That's not going to work. So there's a social significance to food. There's an enjoyment part of food. People look forward to meals, and they can continue to do that. This isn't giving that up and leaving it behind in order to be healthy. Steve, you asked a question about, guarantee, am I not going to have a heart attack? Am I not going to get cancer? And this is the way I explain all of this to people. I drive a car, most people do. All right, so I have insurance, and my car is relatively new, and I make sure it's in good shape, and I fasten my seatbelt, and I drive the speed limit, and I stop at the stop sign, and I live across the street from a school. I'm uber careful because there are kids all over the place, right? So you do everything right driving a car. And most of the time that works out pretty well. You can't do anything about the bus that runs the red light and hits your car and kills you, right? No matter how careful you are. That's exactly the same thing if you decide to control your health with food and lifestyle, diet, lifestyle change. You do everything right. And I think we've all seen some people who did everything right and they still got cancer, did everything right and they still had a heart attack. But that's the exception, not the rule. Most people do not get hit by a bus, all right, who are careful drivers, all right? And most of the time, people who take care of themselves don't have heart attacks and they don't get cancer. So the odds are on your side, but there are no guarantees. I think one thing that we've done in our office that really I think has helped. I don't know about everybody else, but I think at one point in time, I spent a lot of time in the convincing business in this field. And one of the things that we've done, and it goes to our business model, which is informed decision making, is I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm just going to show you a lot of research, and I'm going to show you how to read the research so you can do this on your own. And then you decide what you want to do. So sometimes, I'm sure, Dr. Klaper, you've seen this, somebody says, well, I'm not ready to do this, or I'm not ready to do that. I tell them, I don't know what you're ready to do, but I'll tell you what I think it might be a good next step. Start looking into it. Start looking at studies and research and that sort of thing. And at the end of the day, you're going to make of it what you make of it, and then you can make your decision. And I think one of the things that I've done that has maybe made me sane, I don't know if it's made other people more sane, is just to get detached from the outcome. And I've often told people we kind of look at ourselves as being similar to real estate agents who don't tell you where to live, but make it easier for you to buy a house. So somebody could come to my house where I am right now and say, well, all those trees, my gosh, you must rake leaves all fall long, right? And a big center hall like that, I would never invest in a house with so much real estate tied up in a room you couldn't sit in. Well, this is a bad place for some people to live. It's great for me, all right? And so allowing people to make their own decision, have ownership of the situation, I think is somewhat helpful. And that means sometimes you have to watch people go through a process that's painful to watch because I don't know, sometimes want to say, this could be all over so much faster if you just like make this big leap. But making the transition, however they make it, based on how they look at this is, I think, real important to longevity, sticking with it. And a less perfect diet that's sustained and going in the right direction. I've always operated under this philosophy too. If you take a step in the right direction, you can prod somebody to take another one and another one and another one. But if we blow them out of the water and they're not in the game, well, then we've done something that's real problematic. So I like your approach. You show them a lot of stuff. You give them a lot of information, and then it goes where it goes. And I don't even, like you said, the guy who says I'm never doing this and comes back 3 months later and he's doing it, right? Yeah. And so sometimes just the not forcefulness of it is real important.
But what exactly is the sales pitch? In other words, how much less cancer, heart disease, diabetes, dementia, obesity, arthritis, chronic kidney disease, osteoporosis will I get? If someone is sitting at home saying, I like what I'm doing, leave me alone, I'm fine. I'm just saying, what is the sales pitch? Are you saying that you will get 5% less disease? Are you saying heart disease will go down by I feel by not smoking, my chances of lung cancer are going to go down by 80, 90, who knows what percent. What are you saying? Forget about motivating people. Just what are the percentages is best to your ability from all your experience of how much less likely they are to get each of the top 50 diseases?
Well, before we wade into the numbers game here, we've got to look at things biologically. These diseases that we're struggling with, the obesity, diabetes, hypertension, they should never happen. You raise a child on a whole food plant-based diet, and I've delivered 3 generations now of vegan babies who've grown up and they turn into lean, healthy people with normal blood pressure, normal blood sugars, and they don't develop clogged arteries, don't develop high blood pressure, don't develop abdominal obesity. These diseases shouldn't happen. That's our natural state. And you go around to the blue zones or the younger mommies in the Amazon. They make it to old age lean and healthy and active. And the folks on the Greek islands and Okinawa, they live these lives of activity and social connection, but physical work and a largely plant-based diet. And they make it to their 90s, 100, lean and active, And that's what's supposed to happen. That's the lifespan of a normal Homo sapien. All the rest of these diseases are this bizarre Western distortion of human physiology from this abnormal food stream that just pours meat and dairy and oil and sugar and salt, hour after hour for year after year. It blows us up. And you're saying, well, how much less of that if we eat healthy? Well, it's how much you can return back to that normal configuration, that normal state of function that you should have been in all along. All of us should have. And the folks in the Amazon rainforest, they're old people, have blood pressures of 100/60, like they did when they were kids. It should not. These diseases shouldn't develop. So. When you ask what's the percentage, Dr. Klaper and I have both seen, and all of us docs who work in lifestyle medicine, plant-based medicine, certainly it blew me away 38 years ago in my own body. I stopped eating animal products, and within 12 weeks, a 20-pound spare tire of fat melted off my belly. My high blood pressure went to normal. My high cholesterol went normal. I felt great waking up in a nice, lean, light body every day. And so I left my anesthesia residency when I went back to general practice, started working with my patients using the same diet. And again, now hundreds of times over the decades, we've seen the same changes predictable within days of adopting a whole food plant-based diet, the salads and soups and the veggies and the curries and the chilies and the stews and all the wonderful foods without all the meat and dairy and oils and all of that. Within days, the obesity starts to melt away. The arteries start to relax and open up. The high blood pressures come down. The inflamed joints stop hurting. The psoriatic skin starts to clear up. The asthmatic lungs stop wheezing so much. The migraine headaches start getting better. And they turn into normal people right in front of your eyes. So you want to put a number grid on that, how much improvement, again, everybody's different, depends where they started. But if you had a nice gasoline burning engine sports car, but you've been putting diesel fuel in it, kerosene, and it's running rough and black smoke is coming out the back and it's coughing and sputtering. And then you take it to the garage and they clean out your spark plugs and your fuel line and put in high test gasoline. Runs great. What did you see? You just put in the right fuel and the engine responds. And the same thing, we are plant-eating hominids. We are not carnivorous apes, unlike whatever the keto and the paleo folks are trying to tell us. We have the same basic digestive system that our gorilla and bonobo cousins have, and they're up in the trees eating leaves and fruit. So we have fingers on our hands, not claws. We've got small mouths and flat grinding molar teeth and rotary jaws for grinding up fiber. We've got long intestines for digesting fiber. And we've got in our saliva, we've got starch digesting enzymes. It's clear we're plant-eating creatures. And as long as we keep that whole food, plant-based food stream going through meal after meal, floods our tissues with these phytonutrients and these antioxidants that quench free radicals. It runs more water through our system. It dilates our blood vessels. It fosters tissue repair and stability of our cell membranes. It turns us back into the Homo sapiens we should have been all along before we distorted it with the wrong fuel. So yes, there's a huge drop, and the odds of getting a stroke go way down as the plaque melts away from the arteries. The odds of developing diabetes goes way down as your insulin receptors open up, as that fat clears out of your muscles and your liver. The odds of developing inflammatory joint disease go way down as your gut heals and less inflammatory molecules flow through your joint membranes. The gut wall gets healthier as your microbes change, so the odds of developing Crohn's or colitis goes way down. All these diseases, when you stop hitting yourself in the head with a hammer, the headache goes away. Is that profound medicine? These diseases, if you stop with the steady insults, the body feels it doesn't want to be inflamed. It doesn't want to be clogged up. It wants to be who we were when we were younger. And And as we acquire our wisdom and life's lessons, now we get smarter and use our bodies better, and we enjoy this precious life that we have. You don't want to spend it as a medical patient. There's no power in that. You take your own health back, as Dr. Popper's inviting us to do, and it starts with the food you're putting through your system meal after meal. That's square one. And yes, everything else goes along with it. You need to get enough sleep. You need to get out. You need to exercise. You need to have loving relationships. Get out in nature every day. Absolutely, those are all important too. But then that plant-based diet, until you adopt that, nothing else is going to work, as Dr. Popper said. So yes, you can offer. Everybody's different, and life has no guarantees. And it's tricky to play the numbers game. The patients know it; they feel it within a week or two. They know their bowels are working, their breath is better, they got more energy, they're sleeping better. It doesn't take long. It's not 6 months or 2 years down the road. Within a few days, certainly within a few weeks, you start feeling it. And then let the numbers take care of themselves. They're going to be a healthier person, and that's the most important thing.
Yeah. I agree with you, echo all of that. I guess, Steve, the first thing I wanted to comment on is the person with arms folded who doesn't want to do it. Boy, if we ever come up with a solution for that, I think
Call me.
magic dust. Yeah. I don't think we have a solution for that. And once in a while, people will say something, well, maybe those people should take supplements or something, because that would be better than nothing. And I tell people, listen, there's no solution for people who aren't interested in improving their health or who think they've already got it all figured out, right? If we were doing a financial planning seminar tonight and somebody said, well, what do you do for people who just won't save money? Well, I don't have a solution for people who won't save money. You're going to have a very difficult retirement if that's what you end up doing, right? So I think we have to first talk to people who are interested and make sure that we're not trying to talk people who aren't interested into doing this. I think the second thing is that I agree also with what Dr. Klaper said, that it depends on the person. So an individual who's 25 years old and sees one of the great documentaries out there and says, boy, that I want to protect myself with diet, their risk ratio, it goes down almost to nothing, unless, again, you're looking at the outlier being hit by a bus. But if you're 45 years old and you've had a heart attack and you're overweight and you're taking a couple of medications, you maybe had a stent, you're going to reduce your risk, but you've done enough damage to your body. This is your best chance of staying alive, but your odds are a little bit different because of the state that you're in at the time that you start. And I think that's why you see neither of us wanting to be very specific about saying you can reduce your risk of a heart attack by X%, but it's still just the best option for people to do. But the last thing I wanted to say, which is really interesting, it happened here in Ohio. Many, many years ago, I want to say like 20 years ago, I wrote an article on it. And a gorilla at one of the zoos in northeastern Ohio died of a heart attack. Gorillas in the wild do not die of heart attacks. But what happened was this gorilla died, and they started the zoo personnel and all the veterinarians that take care of the animals. They came up with this novel theory, and you kind of can't keep a straight face when you say this, that maybe if they fed the animals what they eat in the wild, they wouldn't have heart attacks. Go figure. So what is the right diet for a gorilla? Well, it's a lot of fruit and leaves and all that sort of thing, which brings me to, and by the way, this ended death by heart attack in gorillas in American zoos when they arrived at this conclusion that they should feed the animals what's right for the species. So the right diet for human beings is very easy to scientifically prove. It's what the blue zones are eating. You see stark differences in disease rates, even by state in the United States, based on differences in eating patterns. So again, if you just let people look at the evidence, it becomes very, very clear what the right diet for the human species is. And it's different than a carnivore like a cat or a cheetah. It's different than rabbits and skunks and deer. I mean, there is a different diet for different species. And so we are a species designed to live on plants, and the further away we get from that, the more likely we are to have serious health issues.
Okay, thank you. Next question. For people who eat a whole food plant-based diet, and part of their whole food plant-based diet, they eat avocados, they eat olives, they eat raw seeds like pumpkin, chia, flax, sesame, sunflower, hemp. They eat raw nuts like almonds, walnuts, pecans, macadamians, Brazil nuts, cashews. Uh, what do you think about people who eat whole food plant fats? So those four items: avocados, olives, raw seeds, and raw nuts. Is this something that they should eat freely and regularly, or because it has fat in it, do you feel like they should limit it? What are your thoughts about raw plant fats?
Fats are not evil. We need them. Our skinolls are made of fats. Our hormones are made of fats. Every cell membrane in our tissues has a little envelope of fat. We need some fat every day. And I like the list that you gave because they were all whole plant foods. I'm not a big fan of refined vegetable oils. And I tell people, yes, get your fats, but get it out of avocados and walnuts and olives, etc., not out of glass bottles. And you stayed on the whole food side in that selection. So it comes down to a matter of quantity. And too much of anything is not good. And the you start when if you're sitting in front of the TV and you're shoveling in handfuls of almonds or sunflower seeds, you're getting a lot of omega-6 fatty acids, and that may start tipping the balance towards a more pro-inflammatory state in your tissues there. Now, there's questions about how much of the unsaturated fats to eat before the tissues get a little unstable. Might you be increasing your cancer risk if a carcinogen lands on those membranes? What does that do to your blood clotting mechanism? Are these people more prone to serious bleeds? Again, excess of anything is not good. I mean, animals know it. If they come upon some fatty foods, they eat so much, then they move on. They don't sit there and just gorge, as far as I know. So I tell people, nuts are fine, seeds are fine, but hold it to a small handful a day and make them raw nuts rather than roasted. I'm a big walnut fan. It's got the most omega-3s. One small handful, well, so eat them one at a time. Don't be an unconscious shoveler and just sit in front of the TV and just shovel in handfuls of cashews. Turn the TV off. That cashew grower took a lot of trouble to grow those nuts and harvest them and get them to the market and get them into your hand. A cashew, and put it in your mouth, chew it up, and let it flatter over your tongue, and inhale the aroma of it, put a little under your ear, behind your ear. Just be with the experience of cashew eating. Slow down and be a nut eater for that 20 seconds. Swallow it. I think I'll have another. And just be present with your food, and you will only eat one or two handfuls, and it'll be enough. So again, with all these, it starts getting into the magic amulet, silver bullet. If we just have enough acai berries, and we have enough Himalayan sea salt, and enough of the magic avocado, or this nut or that nut, then we'll be healthy. But Dr. Colin Campbell wrote this wonderful book called Whole, WHOLE, and his main point, he's screaming from the mountaintops, is you'll drive yourself nuts if you just zero down on this particular ratio of omega-6 to 3s and how much of this trace mineral is that. He says it's the whole food stream, it's the quality of the whole river of nutrients that's flowing through you, like that gorilla. It's all the nuts and the fruits and the seeds and everything they're eating that's going through his digestive system. I've never had a gorilla in the office complain, I don't know what to eat, doc. They know what to eat. They've got their whole food stream pretty together. And we need to do that. And too much of anything, too much sugary foods, and that is not good. Too much fatty food, not good. Eat that whole balanced food stream. Some days you'll eat more, some days you'll eat less. very smooth. That's okay. It all kind of straightens out in the gut. But as long as they're whole plant foods, they grew out of the ground, and you're keeping your weight on, there's a big variety of them, and you're covering your B12 needs, relax and don't go overboard in any of these, any one or more of these high fat, high nutrient food groups.
I love the term unconscious shoveling. I wrote it down. I'm going to use it. I think I used to be an unconscious shoveler, which is why I used to be fat. Probably that had something to do with it. I agree with you, and I think there's a little bit of individual attention that you have to pay to people. There are some people who are not capable of eating a handful of nuts. Okay, there are some people who can't eat a cookie. All right, I have a good friend who has a box of chocolate in her bedroom closet, and it lasts for a year. I don't understand that, because if I had a box of chocolate in my bedroom closet, I would get up and eat it until it was gone, and it would not be a year, right? So there's a person who can have chocolate in the house. I'm a person who doesn't do so well with chocolate in the house. And so what I'm getting at is, for some people, you can say, look, you have those things, but I, like you, don't like it in oil form, but put some walnuts in your salad or in your stir fry, and okay to have some cashews. There are people who do well with that. And then there are other people who need a different kind of rule to follow if they choose to. And it goes something like this. How about you eat those things when they are part of a recipe? All right. So you're making vegan mac and cheese to take to the church potluck on Sunday, and it calls for cashews, and you make your cheese sauce from cashews and you eat cashews that way. You look at a great stir fry recipe in somebody's book, oil-free stir fry, that says you should chop up some nuts and put them on the top of each serving. So those are, some people do better with that kind of a rule because it's real specific. And this goes to something that we talk a lot about, our dietitians do, our health professionals do with our clients, and that is that we try to be as prescriptive as we can, because there are some people, and I think, and maybe most people actually, when they're standing at the kitchen counter and negotiating with themselves on what they can have, that usually doesn't go so well, as opposed to saying, okay, the rule I've chosen to follow based on what I've seen is this. And so that can sometimes be helpful. Different personalities require different kinds of rules to govern their behavior. But to the extent that they can establish a rule and stick with it, person that can eat a handful of walnuts, terrific. Another person might have to say, my rule is going to be walnuts are in dishes that call for them. And other than that, and you know what the great thing is? The bulk section of the store lets you buy a quarter cup of nuts to put in your recipe. So you don't have to take home the bag if you're a person who can't be in the same vicinity as a bag of nuts. So that might be helpful too.
So just to clarify, if I was saying what's the right amount of cigarettes to smoke in a day, you would both say 0. So in terms of avocados, seeds, and nuts, is it okay to have 2 avocados with lunch and 2 avocados with dinner? Is it okay? Like, what is your, people like these things. They like to use it. People have big green salads. They put in cucumbers, they put in red peppers, they put in lots of greens, and they want to put in avocado. Are you saying no problem, avocados is the same as a cucumber? Or are you saying no, it's a high fat item and you should limit it to 1 a day, 2 a day, 5 a day? Same with seeds, nuts, olives. Like what are you saying in terms of limitations, or is there no limitation if you're not overweight?
I think everybody can handle a half an avocado a day. I think that's certainly within the safe range. And as I said, a small handful, half a cup of nuts or seeds should be safe for everybody. And same thing, half a cup of olives if you really want to throw them on a salad there. But keep it in that range. 2 pounds of olives, 2 pounds of anything is too much. And the same thing, don't be eating 2 avocados a day. You may notice anything initially, but you have to consider what microbes are spawning in your gut. What are you doing to the inside of your arteries for a few hours after all the saturated fat runs through? It's part of the insults that can wind up by an intemperate lifestyle. So if you're looking for a number, half an avocado a day and anywhere between a quarter of a cup to a small handful of nuts and seeds. I think it'll keep you on the safe side there.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's, again, personality wise. Can people have avocados in the fridge and not have them every day? Can people have nuts and not eat them every day? So a little bit of the personality is involved, and I think a part of the confusion comes from some people you mentioned earlier, and I thought this was a really important point that you made, Dr. Klaper, about not attributing magical properties to food. Like if we just eat enough of this food, it's magic. We don't have to worry about anything else. And if you eat this food, eat blueberries, prevents cancer. Well, there are not enough blueberries on the planet to keep some people with some risk factors and some diets from getting cancer, right? So blueberries aren't magical foods. They're great foods to include in your diet. So to a certain extent, I see these articles that say, 10 superfoods for preventing this or that, and avocados there. So people go to the store, they buy 5 avocados, and they say, what am I going to do with these things? Well, I'll have avocado toast for dinner. Then I'll put some avocados in my salad, and then you know what I'm saying. So if you just get away from the idea that any of these things have magical properties, and you start to just look at including them in the diet, and a long time ago when soy was like the controversial thing, it still is in some circles, but that seems to have settled down. And I made a comment at a conference one time. What if every food required that level of deliberation? Okay, so it seems like I've been buying broccoli a lot. Is it too much broccoli? I don't know. I ate it 4 times last week. How much broccoli can you have in one serving? Is there too much sulforaphane in your diet? We never have those discussions about other foods. I've been on and many people do this, particularly if you are a fan of farmers markets. You're eating more of a certain food at certain times of the year and that sort of thing. And we just don't have these discussions about how much of something. We have to be a little more conscious because these foods are higher in fat. But I think the intentionality of, oh gosh, I better eat some of this stuff because I need it for health, takes it too far. And by the way, I keep shifting the light because here in Columbus, the sun is setting. So the light in my office keeps changing because I have these huge windows in the front of my house. So I apologize for the shifting light, but the light has changed about 5 times since we started because it's soon going to be dark. And then when it's stable, I won't change anymore.
Okay, so it sounds like you're saying if there's certain limitations on high fat whole food plants, that what you're really saying to everyone is that what we should be eating every day is vegetables, beans, and whole grains. And a whole grain is quinoa, millet, amaranth, teff, buckwheat, wild rice. A bean is a chickpea, lentil, lima bean, black-eyed pea, pinto bean. So beans, whole grains, and vegetables is what you're recommending. Am I putting words in your mouth, or is that accurate?
Fruit. Don't forget fruit.
Fruit.
Fruit. Lots of fruit.
Lots of fruit.
The beans and whole grains and vegetables is correct, though?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, they're all correct. Absolutely. Yes, it's human food. Yes. Well described.
Okay. Tomorrow night, we're having a panel with Brian Clement and Anna Marie Clement on. I like Brian. He's a friend of mine. I've spoken to him a lot of times. And I've asked him 100 times over the last 15 years, Brian, why do you say that fruit feeds yeast, mold, fungus, sugar, cancer? And he says that him and Thomas Seyfried have conclusively said that when they look at cancer cells, that sugar feeds it. And that fruit, even if it has been bred over the years and hybridized to be sweeter than a wild blackberry would be. And therefore, he's saying that fruit is not our friend. So obviously he's saying it's better than ice cream and cookies and cake, but he's saying, you should be not eating a lot of fruit. And I want him to be wrong because all I want to do in life is eat cherries. There's nothing that would make me more joyous. But he is saying that, and he does say it consistently, and he hasn't budged in 20 years, and he's very insistent that this is what the studies show. And I do find that in nature, you get very little fruit. It's mostly in the month of July. It's little small wild blackberries and black raspberries. Like I wouldn't really have access to most of the fruit that I get that's in the store. So it does make sense that fruit is a little bit unnatural today. The Fuji apple seems sweeter than it would be in a crab apple in nature. So is it possible that we should be somewhat careful about fruit? And I want to be wrong. I want you to say, no, eat as much as you want, but I'd like to know what you think.
Dr. Klaper, I'll let you
Okay.
lead on.
couple of things. The first thing is that I want to talk about hybridization, because if you go to the grocery store tomorrow and somebody who's really knowledgeable about every food in the produce section and say, I would like to buy only the foods that are not hybridized, there's nothing to buy. It is all hybridized. And it's important that it's hybridized. We had a potato famine in Ireland that killed 1 million people because the Irish did not know how to hybridize potatoes. So when the blight came, it killed all the potatoes. If there had been 9 kinds of potatoes growing in Ireland at the time, the death rate would have been 0. So the problem, I think, in some cases, and I like Brian, by the way, and his wife, they're lovely people. I think they try very hard to help people, and they have a lovely place in Florida. I think it's important to say that. But a lot of people talk about hybridization as if it's a negative thing. It's the reason we have food, okay? And my dad, I'll just share this with you. When my father retired, he always was interested in horticulture and gardening and all that. So he went to Ohio State University, and there's a great thing, I don't know if people know about it, but if you're 60 years old or older, you can take classes for free at public universities and colleges. If you want a degree, you got to pay for it. But if you just want to go take classes, you could. So my father got the equivalent of a master's degree in horticulture. And while he was there, he worked with hybridization. And they had an experimental garden. And he used to bring over all these different, like, here's a white sweet potato shaped like a pear. And here's a tomato and all this kind of stuff. And what they're doing is they're looking at how to get food so it can travel further, last longer in your refrigerator, and all this sort of thing. So hybridization is not bad, and that does not make fruit bad. We hybridize all of our potatoes and beans and vegetables too. The second thing is you have a comment that needs to be placed in context, all right? Cancer cells, one of the characteristics of cancer cells is they respire abnormally, which means they take up glucose at a higher rate, 18 times the rate. That's why you can see metastasized cancer on a PET scan, because if you use the right dye and everything else, you can see the uptake. Use an analog, and you can see the uptake of the glucose into the cancer cells. That's how you know where they are. But the problem is that all carbohydrate turns to glucose, and to make it just simple for now. It's a harder conversion to show, but we don't have blackboards and slides. So let's just say if you eat broccoli, you're going to get some glucose. If you eat potatoes, you're going to get some glucose, and some rice and strawberries and all of it, okay? So if you're going to starve the cancer cells of glucose, there are a couple of ways to do it. You can do it for a while with fasting. And I've sent 500 people to Alan Goldhammer's place, at least, maybe more now, some of whom were cancer patients who wanted to quick health improvement, reset their bodies, and begin the process of starving cancer cells so that they could make the chemotherapy more effective or need less of it, or shrink the tumor so the margins are clear and you can take it out. There are all kinds of reasons for doing it. So that's one thing that you can do. Another thing that you can do is that you can eat a ketogenic diet. And I want to be crystal clear about this. There are 2 uses for the ketogenic diet. One is for cancer patients who have cancers that are incurable and kill you quickly. Like if you have glioblastoma, your lifespan is short, maybe only a year. You don't have enough time to go through the healing process of a plant-based diet and fixing everything that's wrong in your life. So a ketogenic diet may keep you alive for a very long period of time, and then also for epileptic children. So the ketogenic diet has been misused and has gotten a bad name because people go out, first of all, and they're saying they're eating a ketogenic diet when they're just eating fat. I have seen cancer patients who died because people told them a high-fat diet was a ketogenic diet, and they never were in ketosis, so the cancer ran wild anyway, right? But a ketogenic diet for a glioblastoma or a stage 4 pancreatic cancer patient is worth trying in some instances if you do it technically correctly, all right? So and what it does is it puts people in a permanent fasting state, because when your body's deprived of carbohydrate, it thinks it's fasting. But to suggest that if you somehow avoid fruit, you're going to avoid glucose uptake is not correct. I mean, the scientific textbooks are pretty clear on this. Carbohydrate and glucose are the same. So eat your strawberries and eat your blackberries and your bananas and everything else. And you cannot stay away from hybridized food. You will have nothing to eat. And farmers have been doing this for hundreds of years. This is not new technology. They did it through seed sharing in the beginning. Now we can make it happen a little bit quicker for better results, but hybridization is in all foods.
Thank you.
Well answered. I don't have much to add except cancer cells. They'll be happy to grow on fat and protein. They'll eat a lot of anything you throw at them. They're quite versatile. And there's a grain of truth like everything else in there. And if you got a cancer, you don't want to be eating a bunch of Snickers bars and Reese's Buttercups and drinking Coca-Colas and flooding your system with fructose and dextrose and these very easily assimilatable carbohydrates. Are going to start fueling some reactions you don't want. But that's different than eating an apple. Where you've got a whole different set of sugars. They're bound to the fiber, plenty of water, and lots of vitamins and minerals come in with it, and the sugars rise very slowly and gently and clear out quickly. So to take that big broad brush, oh, carbs are bad, carbs feed cancer. Again, you got to be a bit of somewhere between a scientist and just a good wise consumer. And as long as you're eating whole plant foods, the occasional orange or apple, I've never seen any study showing that causes the cancer patient any sacrifice in survival or enjoyment of life or anything like that. But don't be eating the Cokes and the candies. That's true. I'll certainly agree with Brian on that one.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Dr. Klaper, you have some information that everyone in the world wants to know. You're one of the very, very few people on the planet that could confidently answer the question of what actually happens when someone does a water fast. There's very, very few people, very, very few, who literally have worked in a water fasting clinic, a medically supervised water fasting clinic, and seen, I don't know what your number is, but I assume it's in the thousands. So the real question we want to know, we don't want to have to do our own trial and error. We want to know, what is the benefit? What is this? Tell us, what benefit do we get if we do it? How often should we do it? Do we need to go somewhere and do it for 21 or 30 days? Should we do it once a week at home? Should we do it from all your knowledge of water fasting, what could we do to benefit, and should we do it? And does it have to be water? Could it be green juice? So give us what we could take from it, from your experience.
Wow. A powerful question opens up a big, long answer that I'm going to try and compress into a small little cup here. Yes, I was privileged to work on the staff of Dr. Goldhammer's True North Health Center for almost 9 years. And it's a clinic in Northern California that focuses on whole food plant-based diets, but we also do therapeutic water-only fasting. And over those 9 years, I was one of the chief medical officers there. I supervised several thousand fasts as people went through. That's true. And I am still in awe of the process, and I will explain why in a minute. Let me first turn back the evolutionary clock back a million years or so, back on the African savannas, and our foraging band of ancient hominid ancestors spent most of the days looking for food. And the food they were looking for, actually, despite the mighty hunter myth of the paleo folks that we lived on mammoth meat, the truth of it is most of the calories brought in to the ancient Paleolithic camp were gathered by the women who spent all day gathering up or digging up roots and tubers and harvesting edible grasses and berries. We were carbohydrate, starch-burning creatures then. We still are today. And we would live on these easily accessible carbohydrates and natural plant fats, etc. But in those wild times, you can imagine that frequently 4 or 5 days would go by before your foraging band found the next tree with fruit on it, or the next carcass rotting in the sun, wherever they got their calories. And these enforced 4, 5, 6, 7 day fasts were probably the rule. And our bodies adapted to it. And we developed this amazing metabolic ability. Apparently chimpanzees can't do it, but we can shift into a metabolic gear where we can live off the stored fat on our bodies. And in doing so, As we burn through our stored carbohydrates, our glycogen in about 48 hours, we shift into fat burning. And as you metabolize these long chain fats, these small acidic molecules called ketones come in the bloodstream, and your cells are awash in these ketones. And for a while, 5, 7, 14 days of ketosis, remarkable things happen in the body. This sends chemical messages to all your tissues, and they each react a bit differently. They all know that calories are precious now. We've stopped eating that flood of carbohydrates, and the body shifts into this remarkable metabolic gear. We get more efficient with our calories. Thyroid function goes down. General metabolism goes down. The body doesn't want to waste energy on useless reactions like running inflammatory reactions, a waste of stored calories. So we see inflammation dial down. Running a malignant tumor is a real waste of energy. And we have seen patients with lymphomas have them get smaller. The body enters a state of conservation. And this amazing process called autophagy happens, where the cells look into themselves and for molecules that they can use for fuel to throw into the metabolic furnace. So old oxidized starches and junk DNA and junk proteins, the body cleans itself out during this stage. It's really remarkable. And during this time, various medical conditions can often get better. First of all, when you hit about day 3 or 4, for people who are white-knuckled at the thought of not eating for 3 weeks, by day 3, one thing that the ketones do by and large is that they suppress hunger. And by day 3, 4, you're not hungry anymore. And people would stop me in the courtyard, "Doc, I haven't felt this good in years. I haven't eaten in 3 weeks. I feel great. I'm not hungry. I got energy. I'm feeling good." And again, the body gives us this metabolic gift in which healing happens, inflammation subside. So we see high blood pressures come down. We see sore joints settle down. You see these fierce skin patches of psoriasis fade right before your eyes, by day 10, day 15, the psoriasis goes away. It's really remarkable what the body does during this time. And again, you're drinking water or vegetable broth, it will work as well. And you're not hungry. You don't want to do a lot of physical activity. Don't lay in bed. But get out of bed, do a little yoga, a little stretching, but that's it. Don't be doing aerobic workouts during a water fast. And you take this as long as your body can handle it in a healthful manner. That said, we're Americans. A little is good, more must be better. He fasted 2 weeks. I'll fast 3 weeks. I'll fast 4 weeks. Fasting, it's a powerful state, but it's a state of stress. These ketones are acidic, acetone, beta-hydroxybutyric acid, acetoacetic acid. These are metabolic acids. And this is an acid load your body's got to deal with. Your liver's got to deal with it. Your kidney's got to excrete this acid. Your bones got to neutralize these acids. It's a state of stress. And you don't want to stay in it month after month after month. I get concerned about people in these ketogenic diets staying in ketosis week after week after week. As Dr. Popper said, you got a glioblastoma? Absolutely. You got a kid who's seizing every 10 minutes? Yes, consider that. But for the average bear, fasting, it's good for a clean out. Most everybody not on medications can certainly do 5 days at home. Everybody can do a weekend fast on water or vegetable broth, Friday to Monday. That's 3 days. And most people can tack on another couple if you want. 5 days, if you're a basically healthy person, that's as far as you want to go at home. After that, if you start running into nausea or lightheadedness or things that can happen, you want to be in a place where there's people who know what they're looking at and what's serious and what isn't. That's why you go to Dr. Goldhammer's True North, Nathan Gershfeld's clinic down in Orange County, Gracie Ewan's in Pennsylvania, I think she's at. There are fasting centers around. If you're going to be doing a long fast, it needs to be medically supervised. So let me just make it clear. I'm talking about medically supervised fasting. We have interns at True North, and we knock on that door twice a day. Hi. We talk to the person. How you doing? Any lightheadedness? Any nausea? You get any headache? We check their vital signs, check their pulse, check their blood pressure. We watch them like a hawk, and we draw their blood once a week. We check their kidney function, their liver function, and if anything says they're starting to run into trouble, they're getting ready to vomit, they're getting so lightheaded they almost passed out going to the bathroom, that's the end of the fast. If their blood tests show their creatinine going up and their kidneys are having a tough time, that's the end of the fast. They can always come back and do another fast, but it's just not worth putting them in any risk. So that's what medical supervision is about. So nobody should be doing these long unsupervised fasts at home. Now, if you're an experienced faster and you've done 7-day fast repeatedly at home, that earns you a little bit of leeway there. But by and large, if you're just getting into it, there's some excellent books on fasting. Dr. Furman's got a good book on fasting. There's good information on the internet. There's a lot of crazy information on the internet. But you put your toe in the water, start with a 2-3 day fast at home, break it on fruit or steamed veggies, and become a student of fasting. So there's medically supervised fasting for official high blood pressure type, diabetes, official medical diseases. You're asking, how about just a tune-up fast, once a month, a 3-day fast? That's wonderful. I wish everybody would do that. We'd be a healthier country if once a month everybody did a 3-day fast, 4-day fast. And it teaches you something, how dependent we are on this taste orgy, this nonstop gorgeathon that we're into for 5 days. Stop that. And it gives you a better understanding of food and more control over yourself. It's a beautiful thing to do. Just don't make it a marathon. Don't get yourself in trouble. And if you're on medications, you can't stop. In other words, you shouldn't do this on blood pressure pills. They get potentiated. Don't do it if you're taking prednisone. Don't take it if you're taking psychiatric drugs, SSRIs. You should not be doing a water fast. Those drugs get potentiated. And at True North, we stop all drugs. And if they can't, if they're on pills, they can't stop, then they don't do a water fast. They do a juice cleanse or just raw veggie and steamed vegetable cleanse. And that's okay. It gets them moving in that right direction. So fasting is wonderful. Learn about it, respect it. And I've seen it do amazing things, but as I jump up and down and tell the folks there, if fasting is wonderful, lowers blood pressure, does all these wonderful things, but it's a blip on the screen in your life. What matters is what you eat after the fast, because if you can do this wonderful 21-day fast, lower your blood pressure, but if you go back into the buffalo wings and the burgers and the pizzas, man, Cinderella turns back into a pumpkin within days. It is shocking how quickly all those wonderful changes get reversed. The blood pressure goes up, the joints start hurting, the skin breaks out, the lungs start wheezing. The water fast is a stepping off place to a whole food, plant-based diet. That's where the real healing happens. That's where the magic is. It's not the freaking water fast. It's what you eat after. And you can corollary is no one really needs the water. The truth of it is, if you just get on a whole food plant-based diet, and over a few months you're going to be in the same place if you're done a fast. But it can be helpful as a jump start, as a bridge, as a boost to get those beneficial changes happening. But the magic isn't in the fast. The magic's in the food that you eat afterwards.
And is a green juice fast as effective or as a good replacement of sunflower, sprout, and celery juice instead of water?
Wow, interesting question. And the reason why it's so interesting, again, reflects back into the ketosis. How many calories do you need to take in before you don't go into ketosis? And the number is, as Dr. Walter Longo is showing us, around 500, 600 calories. If you keep your intake below 500 or 600 calories, you'll go into ketosis and get the advantage, even though, that's why vegetable broth works, and a dilute green juice would probably work. It's the so-called fast mimicking diet. You're still taking in a few hundred calories, but it's low enough that you go into ketosis. But once you go over 500, 600 calories, and you can do that with depending what's in the green juice. But if you're putting peas and kale and a little beets or whatever in there, you can get 500 calories in that glass of juice. And especially if you have 2 or 3 of those glasses during the day, you're cooking along and, it's 800, 900 calories. You're not going to go into ketosis. Now, it's a wonderful thing to do, but just to tighten up the terminology there, at that point, it's not a fast, it's a cleanse. You're not really going into ketosis. So it's a juice cleanse. And they're wonderful compared to what most people eat. I'm all for juice cleanses, but you won't go into ketosis. So it depends what's really in the juice, how dilute it is. But it's a wonderful thing to do. And then just come back into steamed vegetables and vegetable soups after that.
Welcome, Dr. McDougall. Nice to see you.
Hey, John. Good to see you. You're muted.
You're muted, Dr.
There you go. Nice to be here. Michael, hello. Pam, how you doing?
Good to see you. Like your beard. Like your beard. All
Hey,
right.
how about that? I'm finally getting older.
All right. It does hurt a bit.
Well, at least maybe I'll be under control tonight.
Dr. Klaper, just one final question on that. If someone has, from all your experience, if someone has cancer, is water fasting a solution? Does it work? Does it prevent? Does it heal? Is it something that would you if you knew someone that had cancer, would you say you should go on a water fast for 24 days?
Oh my God.
Unfortunately, Stephen, you're asking the wrong person. That's not my expertise.
No, Dr. Klaper was asking.
Yeah. Right. And then I think Dr. Klaper wants to say something too. It's a fascinating subject for a number of reasons. And it's not a matter of taking someone who's down to 90 pounds and body shot through with metastatic cancer to put them on a long water fast. You'll just watch them wither away and disappear. That said, however, if the person's got enough flesh on their bones, the cancer cells don't do well in ketosis. Where your stem cells kind of hunker down and protect themselves. Cancer cells can't do that. And what Dr. Longo is showing us and others is that one interesting use for fasting. We did have a lady who came to True North with a grade 3 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and she did a 28-day water fast, and we watched those swollen lymph nodes and her abdominal mass just shrink away just from the fast alone. So it can have beneficial properties. Again, it's a lymphoma, which is a watery tumor, different than some gnarly sarcoma or carcinoma, but it was a tumor that seemed to lend itself. So there's some anti-cancer properties there. But what we're finding is, as I was implying earlier, that the water fast gives the cells puts the normal cells into a bit of suspended, not animation, but preservation. The stem cells stop multiplying so fast, but the cancer cells can't do that. So then, if you come in with a course of chemotherapy on day 3 or 4 of a water fast, they're finding it works much better. You get a much better response. And I've had patients with breast cancer who are due to have a course of chemotherapy. They don't say anything to the oncologist, but go in on day 2 or 3 of a water fast and see, 1, if you don't have fewer side effects, and 2, if you don't get a better response. And there's some solid evidence showing of this. It's not, we've got a lot more to learn about it. But so fasting can play a role potentiating, it probably even potentiates photon therapy, radiation therapy as well. So there is a role for fasting in cancer, but we've got so much to learn about it at this point. A lot of research needs to be done. But if you've got a cancer and you've got chemotherapy, get the books by Dr. Walter Longo, Longo, and follow the studies that he sites there, and decide if fasting has a role for you. And give a call to the folks at True North. Maybe go there and fast just before your surgery or your chemo. See if you don't get a better result because of it. Fasting can play a role. Dr. Popper, do you have a?
Yeah, I thought he asked me. I wasn't trying to interrupt when I misunderstood. But the only thing I would add to it, if the question is, should a cancer patient fast? I think that the key to successful outcomes for cancer patients is to stop for a few weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, and figure out a plan. And the reason I say this, in my office for 26 years, I've heard if I'd known then what I know now, I wouldn't have done. And then you can fill in the blank, whatever it is. And it can be for cancer or heart disease or diabetes. The reason it's worse for cancer is because a diabetic who decides to do the wrong thing can change course and probably end up okay. The cancer patient who decides to do the wrong thing, sometimes it costs them their life, right? So it's uber important, in my opinion, to stop and take and really figure out what kind of cancer do you have, how aggressive is it, what kind of time do you have, and then look at outcomes data on everything. And my experience has been working with cancer patients that the best treatment is taking the best of all modalities, And there's a book called Radical Remission by Kelly Turner. I recommend it to every cancer patient and their family. It's a study of 1,000 cancer patients who were terminal, but didn't die and outlived their prognosis, but some of them by 28, 30, 35 years, right? And what she found, she surveyed these cancer patients, and she identified 70 some strategies they used, but they all 100% who didn't know each other used the same 9. That's what the book is about. And the common themes in the book were that, first of all, diet was the first chapter. They all changed their diet. That's very telling. They followed their intuition. Their doctors described them as annoying, actually, routinely. And I think you want to be an annoying cancer patient when you're looking for solutions, right? But really, if you had to summarize what these people did, is they all did a whole lot of different things to survive. And some of them fasted, and some of them did other things too. So I think that the key is coming up with a plan that often can include and should include fasting if they're candidates to do it. And we have a lot of cancer patients we've sent to True North who wouldn't be here today had they not used fasting as part of their overall treatment plan.
Okay, since Dr. McDougall joined us late, I just want to tell everyone a little bit about him. Just so you know, when I was younger, I bought a book. I think it was called Maximum Weight Loss. Is that the name of your book, Dr. McDougall?
That's one of them, yes, the Maximum Weight Loss Program. Mm-hmm.
And that was the book that influenced me to become interested in health, nutrition. It was the original book. So all the real truth about health speakers, all the lectures, everything we've done is 100% credited to the influence I had from Dr. McDougall's book. And I also feel that his credibility, aside from being an MD who's been studying this for 50 years, is exceptional because he, I'm not sure if you all know this, he worked as like the only doctor in an African country with over 1,000 people, taking care of people and seeing in the front line what happens. And I guess his basic experience, I don't want to speak for him, was that he didn't see Western diseases. And he had a firsthand experience of what it's like to follow a healthy lifestyle, because he was the doctor for this large group of people in an African country when no one was getting sick and no one was getting heart disease and diabetes and obesity.
Stephen, can I interject
Please.
there?
Yes.
That's a story of Dennis Burkett that I like to tell. He was one of my mentors. My history started as a sugar plantation doctor on the Big Island of Hawaii, where I took care of 5,000 people. And what I saw was my first generation patients who were from the Philippines, Japan, China, Korea, who learned to diet rice and vegetables. And then they moved over to Hawaii, and then their children and the grandchildren learned the rich Western diet. And so I had these 5,000 people I was taking care of who ate differently. The first generation who lived on white rice, vegetables, almost no meat at all. They didn't have rheumatoid arthritis, heart disease, breast cancer, obesity, and so on. The second generation that started eating more Western foods, we got the first McDonald's in Hilo, Hawaii in 1974. By the way, I was one of their first and best customers. But things have changed in my life too. And what I saw as the second generation adopted the Western diet, they got fatter and sicker. And by the time you got to the third generation, they were just as fat and sick as anybody I trained on back in Michigan or on Oahu. The really important thing was for me to figure out that once you stop throwing gasoline on a fire, which is the rich Western diet, people naturally get well. We have this innate tendency to heal. You just have to identify the source of repeated injury, which is the fork and spoon shoveling into the meat and dairy and other junk foods. And so that was really my revelation. The man that you were talking about was Dr. Dennis Burkett, who I'd like you to learn more about. He's discussed in my January 2013 newsletter. In fact, the only interview done of Dennis Burkett, I did, the only video interview ever done of him, and that's present on my website. And then you'll learn about my other mentors like Nathan Pritikin. He's my favorite February 2013 newsletter. And then Walter Kempner, who was in my December 2013 newsletter. I stand on the shoulders of some very interesting men. It wasn't my choice that they were all men, but just happened to be that way. So, quite honestly, Stephen, very little of what I teach is original. It's been around for, hundreds, if not thousands of years. Rich foods make people sick.
Okay, let me ask you another question, Dr. McDougall. When you say starch was the traditional diet of people, what
Yes.
foods specifically are you referring to, and which people are you speaking of?
Well, starch, see, plants, they store their calories for the next season. They store them above ground in the form of grains and legumes. They're seeds above ground. And they store them below ground in the form of roots and sweet potatoes and potatoes. And what happens is because of the stored energy, they sprout anew in the springtime. Well, human beings are best adapted to live on starches. And almost everybody who's walked planet Earth has lived on a starch-based diet. Take the American Indian, corn. Central America, for 1,300 years, the Aztecs and Mayans were known as the people of the corn. In South America, you're talking about potato eaters. The Middle East used to be known as the breadbasket of the world. And when I mention the Far East, what do you think about? 2 billion people in 1980 lived on white rice. They had virtually no heart disease, breast cancer, colon cancer, prostate cancer, rheumatoid arthritis, multiple sclerosis before 1980. And Stephen, now that they've become just like Americans, they have an instance where it was just reported they have 12% of the population's frankly diabetic in China. Half of them are pre-diabetic. You can see it. We're old enough to observe what's happened in the last 50 years. It's become a planet of kings and queens and aristocrats, and we're fat and sick and we got the gout. The nice thing is if we can stop the cause, our patients get well. And the really exciting thing, Stephen, is we got a planet to save. And the same diet that has saved my patients over the last 44 years is the same diet that's going to save this planet. It's a starch-based vegan diet. You can't talk in terms of plant foods because people don't live on cabbage and kale and broccoli and cauliflower. There's just not enough calories. They live on starches, corn, rice, potatoes, wheat, pastas. 99.99% of the people who've walked planet Earth have lived on starch-based diets. That's my thing.
Okay, let me ask all of you a question. If someone says, okay, I heard them speak tonight, they were great, I'm going to switch. I'm going to eat beans, I'm going to eat whole grains, I'm going to eat vegetables, I'm going to have some fruit. What about blood sugar? In other words, if you sit there and eat beans and potatoes and you get a glucometer, your blood sugar is higher after you eat. I mean, are you seeing, I guess, what are the results? Forget about anything. What are the results you all have seen when people eat beans, whole grains, fruits, and vegetables on blood sugar and type 2 diabetes?
Percival Hinsworth published in 1940 in the British Medical Journal the classic article that showed type 2 diabetes is due to fat. The experience I've had is that 100% of type 2 diabetics can be cured by weight loss, and weight loss is best accomplished by a starch-based diet. 100% can be cured. So the idea that potatoes raise blood sugar is only a temporary phenomenon. When you eat, your blood sugar is supposed to go up. Sugar, even pure white sugar, makes insulin work better. Brunzell at the University of Washington showed that in 1978 in the New England Journal of Medicine. So because we have it all screwed up, Stephen, because people believe that starches make sugar go up, which causes diabetes, they get it all wrong. It's a guarantee that all diabetics will remain diabetics for the rest of their life because they got the wrong message. 100% are curable with weight loss, and the best way to permanently lose weight is a starch-based diet.
I had asked Dr. Popper and Dr. Klaper, as far as fat, in terms of olives, avocados, nuts, and seeds, do you recommend or not recommend that we include this in our diet?
Well, these are healthy foods, but they're also rich foods. You know, I think our creator put nuts in hard shells for a reason. And coconut, of course, has the hardest shell of all, doesn't it? Avocados only come in season for 2 weeks of the year. You know, in the United States at Whole Foods, they're in season every single day. And these nuts and seeds and avocados are 80, 90% fat. They will make you fat, which will hurt your lower extremity joints, which may contribute to type 2 diabetes. But these are not unhealthy foods. They're just very high energy foods, high fat foods. So I include in the diet of people who need to gain weight. A lot of our patients eventually need to gain weight. I include more nuts and seeds and avocados in their diets, a few olives if they choose. Yeah.
Okay.
Rich food, but healthy food.
Okay. For all of you, the simple question: what makes you gain weight? Is it sugar? Is it fat? Like what makes you gain weight? People are trying to lose weight and gain it. What makes, for someone who doesn't want to be overweight, which is most people, everyone, what makes you gain weight?
Let me mention, as long as I have the audience here for a minute, let me mention one of my mentors was Walter Kempner at Duke University. He was there for 7 decades. He kept Duke University in a positive financial situation for 2 decades. He served what is known as the rice diet. It consisted of white rice, fruit juice, and table sugar. It was 93% sugar. And he was curing back then, as you can cure today, type 2 diabetics with that kind of diet. Now, it doesn't mean it's the healthiest diet in the world. It just should prove to you the nonsense that's out there about how sugar causes diabetes. Complete nonsense. What can I say? Except that everybody's got it wrong. And that's why we have a population of progressively enlarging people, progressively sick people. And we have a planet that's dying because we got it wrong.
And when you say this, are you saying this as a researcher, or are you saying this with someone with practical experience, who you've had people right in front of you and you've consistently seen their weight and their diabetes, their obesity and their diabetes disappear following this exact advice?
At 3 levels. I've taken care of 12,000 patients personally. Our data is published in the journal Nutrition. It's never been criticized. There's data on 1,703 people that we published, and nobody was left out. And 90% of people were able to reduce or stop their medications, particularly blood pressure and diabetic medications. Plus, the scientific literature is loaded with information. My September 2009 newsletter is a good review of the information that shows fat paralyzes insulin, which causes diabetes. Obesity paralyzes insulin, puts people in insulin resistance, which causes diabetes. It's not sugar. That's why sugar patients never get better. Diabetes never existed in Asia before 1980. They didn't have type 2 diabetes. And what did they live on? Don't you think people have it wrong? And then when they would learn the which American diet, they have an incidence of diabetes very similar to ours. And you know what? They have is almost as many Tesla supercharger stations as we do in this country. Do you get the correlation? Tesla cars cause diabetes.
I'll talk about just for a minute what causes people to gain weight. People have been taught by the diet industry the secret to staying lean, or to getting lean if you're overweight, is to calorie count and fat gram count and nutrient count. And so the first problem is that nobody can do it accurately, okay? for dinner, before I got on this show tonight, I don't know if you guys make this stuff, but sometimes I just take everything I have out of the fridge that is a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and you make a soup out of it, right? So I had this soup that probably had 19 ingredients in it. It had some black beans, and it had some broccoli, it had some leftover this and that and everything else, a little bit of peas left over in a. Okay, so how do we figure out how many calories I ate? I have no idea. And it would take the rest of the evening. I would have missed being here while I figured out, put the peas over here and figure out how many there were. So you can't really measure and count your way there. And then they don't understand calorie density. And we've talked a lot before Dr. McDougall got here about oils, and we talked about avocados and nuts and this sort of thing. So people don't understand calorie density. And it's very easy to eat a plant-based diet even and have the same macronutrient makeup of your diet as when you were eating cheese, pizza, and buffalo wings, right? Just as much fat, just as much protein, and not enough carbohydrate. And so one of the things that we try to help people do is to get into an eating pattern that doesn't require so much thought. All right. Contrary to popular opinion, I don't think about food all day long. I just make sure that in my house, there's nothing here that I can hurt myself with. So if you've got a bottle of salad dressing that has 120 calories per tablespoon because it's got oil in it, you got to be very careful how much of that stuff you put on your salad. What I put on my salad at dinner, it has 7.5 calories per tablespoon. So if I went crazy and drank the whole bottle, I can't get fat. All right. I can't gain weight. So if people learn how to do this, there's a cracker, this grocery store that I buy my stuff from. They have a cracker. 5 crackers has 70 calories and 5 grams of fat. Well, I've never eaten 5 crackers in my whole life. All right. I'm going to eat 15 crackers. All right. That's a ridiculous amount of fat. So what you have to teach people is to buy, if you're going to eat crackers, you buy very low fat crackers. Hummus. There's a hummus that's in every grocery store in the Midwest. 2 tablespoons have 70 calories and 5 grams of fat. I've never had 2 tablespoons of hummus in my whole life. All right. So everybody's going to get fat and gain weight eating that kind of stuff. You buy the fat-free hummus that just chickpeas with seasonings and red peppers or whatever else you're going to put in it. You can eat the whole package. It's 180 calories and no fat. All right. So I think that if people start to understand calorie density of food, and they know how to focus on the stuff you can eat as much as you want of, and get away from this trying to calculate your way to success. All right. Make your house so you can't mess it up. In fact, I've got a video on our members website called A Tour of Dr. Pam's Kitchen. And I just had somebody come in with a camera on camera on their phone and just walk through and show how the whole house is set up so that I can't hurt myself, no matter how much food I eat tonight when I get off of this session, right? And if people do this, they won't gain weight. They'll be full. You have to have satiety. That's another thing. People try to restrict, and then they're hungry all the time, and that never works either. So, and then if you're lean and you're eating well, you're not going to become diabetic, to Dr. McDougall's point.
And if you're looking for some science behind weight gain, one factor, not to drive yourself nuts over it, and this is only for people trying to lose weight. If you're already lean, do not pay attention to what I'm going to say here. But there's something particularly fat producing about eating fats and sugars at the same time. The scientific terminology is oxidative priority. It's easier for the body to burn sugar, to blow apart a glucose ring, than to metabolize these long chain fatty acids with lots of enzyme work there. So if you eat fat and sugar at the same time, if you pour oil on your pasta, if you put guacamole on your baked potato, if you're putting whipped cream on or ice cream on your, ice cream is fat and sugar. The body, as the fat and sugar enters, I'll burn sugar now and I'll store the fat for later. So when you eat that fat sugar combo, you burn the sugar and you store the fats. And so even in a vegan diet, again, pouring oil on your pasta, having an almond butter and jelly sandwich, you're going to burn the sugar in the jelly and the bread. You're going to store the fat in the almond butter for later. And again, the guacamole on the pasta, on the baked potato. So what's the answer? Well, split them out. Have a baked potato, but put salsa on it. Because if you're trying to lose weight, put salsa on that. You can have avocados, but put that on the salad for dinner. A few hours later. Don't be eating them at the same time. Now, don't want to drive everybody nuts over this, but in general, when you see that fat sugar combo and all vegan baked goods, every vegan donut, every vegan that's fat and sugar. That's what's holding there's fat holding that the sugar together in the donut and the piece of coffee cake there. It's that fat sugar combo that gets you. And so, as Dr. Popper says, in her house, she's got mango chunks and grapes alone. She doesn't eat them with a bunch of fat. And how many, after 10 mango chunks, it's enough. And it doesn't stick to you. And so that's the beauty of whole plant foods. By and large, they don't stick to you. It's the process, the flour products and the oils and the junk foods eaten in that fat sugar combo. That's really what sticks to you. So go with the whole plant foods and you'll stay nice and lean and healthy.
Michael, I'd like to add a synergistic mechanism.
Okay.
To all of what you said is absolutely true. But insulin drives fat into fat cells. And when you eat sugar, it raises insulin levels. So it's a double whammy combination, the two together, when you combine fat and sugar. And of course, they do in cakes and ice cream and pies and so on. It's a favorite combination. For one reason, fat is so disgusting and people won't eat fat. Drink a glass of olive oil, you won't do it. It's the only way we can get fat down is to mix it with sugar and salt. And that's the secret of industry. The way they get you to eat the fat is they combine it with salt and put it on potato chips or French fries, because you wouldn't eat the fat alone. The way they used to get me to eat the sugary donuts without the sugar is they added sugar. I couldn't eat the greasy donuts. You see, so industry knows how to get you to eat fat, which is cheap calories. I don't think they're out there trying to hurt you. And that is to add salt, sugar, and spice to it. Well, as Michael was explaining, when you add salt and sugar together, sugar raises insulin. Insulin drives fat into fat cells. There's another mechanism. It may be one. I know it fits with what you're just trying to say, Michael.
Okay. Very quickly, just a quick answer. Do you recommend bariatric surgery for some patients?
No one would ever need it that followed any of the advice of the three panelists you hear up here. But there was one of the reasons I say type 2 diabetes is 100% curable is starting about the year 2008, the New England Journal of Medicine started publishing articles of type 2 diabetics who had bariatric surgery. And they reported about an 80% cure rate. I figure if bariatric surgery, just with the weight loss, could cure 80% of the diabetics, type 2, that, hey, well, we're to it's got to cure 100%. And that's been my experience, 100%. By definition, it's 100% curable. Type 2 diabetes is due to diet. The body becomes insulin to try and protect, or insulin resistant to try and protect itself. The mechanisms are all so easy to understand.
I've always found it interesting that in order to qualify for bariatric surgery, you have to get counseling, and then you have to demonstrate that you're capable of changing your diet and adopting a different eating plan. So the irony that I've never understood is that a person who's morbidly obese, weighs 500 pounds, consults with a bariatric surgeon who refers that individual to a counselor and a dietitian, and the person starts losing weight, demonstrating that he or she can change their diet, at which point they abort the plan and move them to surgery. Okay, so I simply do not understand it, because what I would do if I were the bariatric surgeon, I'd probably be arrested for bait and switch, because I'd say, we tricked you. Now you know you can do this. We're just going to keep doing it until you no longer weigh 500 pounds, right? You get down to your normal weight. So, and then another thing I'll point out, I did some research. I teach a course on obesity through our school. And I did some research on long-term outcomes from bariatric surgery. And I thought this was very interesting. One of the justifications to get insurance companies to pay for it is that it is supposed to reduce the costs for these patients. It does initially, But if you look at the 10, 12-year outcomes, first of all, a lot of these people gain their weight back. And the other thing is what you do is you substitute the diabetic emergencies that Dr. McDougall is referring to, the diabetes associated with obesity, and you end up with complications from the surgery itself, nutrient deficiencies and all kinds of other problems that these people have. So there's no cost savings from this whatsoever. So recommend against.
I just want to take you back because I don't think I'm this whole treatment of obesity thing. Actually, the Archives of Internal Medicine in the early 90s published the results of the Walter Kempner rice diet treating morbid obesity and showed in competition with bariatric surgeries that this was as effective, if not more effective, and in a way that cost nothing with no side effects. So I would encourage all you folks, if you are interested in diabetes and how to cure it and how to cure obesity, look up the pioneer work, Walter Kempner. He came to Duke back in 1934, started the rice diet in 1939. Again, it supported Duke University for at least 2 decades. You guys have heard of the rice diet. I mean, that's the extremes. You know, we don't need to go that far to help our patients. But if you want to know what you can use as a highly effective dietary tool, I'd say that's just short of a fast, right, Michael? You know,
Yes.
I mean, we would send them to Kempner. You come to me, we send them on to Kempner, and then we finally send them to you. And by the way, I do that, you know, out of frustration because either people won't listen to me and I punish them a little. I send them over to the water fast. No, I'm just kidding. or there's an occasional case, particularly with autoimmune diseases, that somehow I can't figure it out. But, you know, fortunately, that doesn't happen very often. Fortunately, most people with autoimmune diseases, simply dietary changes take care of it. They don't have to go to a fasting effort. But
Correct.
hey, sometimes it's a great tool to sort it out. Thank you.
Correct.
Thank you, Michael.
So
Church.
during this conference, we have a lot of people who are speaking about the benefits of a healthy diet and lifestyle. And a lot of people have their own thoughts on it and kind of have a pretty good feeling. They've heard you before, they've listened to you. But the area where there's complete chaos, a total breakdown of information, and people are completely desperate to figure things out is the area of nutritional supplements. We have some people saying you don't need them, you get everything from the food. We have some people saying no matter what, take B12, take vitamin C, D, green powders, probiotics, enzymes to digest food. There's a crazy amount of information constantly telling us that we need it. If you go to any doctor's office and they take a blood test, you're low in molybdenum, you're low in something, and by the time you're done, you have a list of supplements you need. What is the accurate information? I don't want to have a deficiency that leads to some problem. I don't want to not have enough zinc. What should we do when it comes to nutritional supplements? What do you advise?
I'm such a nice guy. I'm going to defer myself on that question. I don't want to offend anybody.
Please go ahead.
No, I'm not going to do it.
Never mind offending anybody.
Tell them, Michael. Tell them what you think of supplements. Go ahead. Lose half the audience, Michael. Right there.
Well, maybe I'll take the middle ground. I think that part of what has happened in medicine and healthcare is we've gotten into this everybody, nobody, always, never. And I train healthcare practitioners to do what we do. And I tell people, if you are not comfortable living in the gray area where you're talking to an individual human being about the individual's personal situation, there is no always, never, everybody, nobody. All right. That's a lazy way to be in the healthcare business, in my opinion. So I think that if we say no supplements ever, that might be not very good. And if we say here, I get pretty prickly when people say, here are the 12 supplements I recommend that everybody take. I think that's ridiculous too. I do think that vegans should take a low dose B12 supplement. And I'm seeing people take horse-like doses of this stuff based on the idea that if a little bit's good, 2,000 times as much per day must be better. And I think it's important to point out that one of the things people don't understand about research on supplements is they say, well, I can't find any evidence that it's harmful. Well, that may mean that nobody's studied it to see if it's harmful. That's a different story than it's been proven not to be. Okay, so a low dose B12 for vegans. I think a lot of people need a high quality probiotic because they've had so much antibiotic and steroids and drugs that destroy your microbiome. I think that is on a very person by person basis. I certainly wouldn't say everybody needs them. And then everything else after that is dependent upon the person and what's wrong with them. And again, we teach a course on dietary supplements, and we try to teach people how to look at this from an objective standpoint rather than coming to it with a philosophy about it. Okay, the philosophy should be we'll go where the evidence takes us, and if there is benefit to using a supplement, we use it. I will say one more thing, and then want to hear what everybody else has to say. And that is the one thing to be careful of is if there is the supplements you have to be most careful of, in my opinion, are the ones that have an effect. Because if there is an effect, there's going to be a side effect. That's the thing with drugs, right? So if there is an effect, there's going to be a side effect. And in many cases, we don't know what that is. So that also has to be weighed as well. And one last thing I'll say is that with some of these supplements, it's a no harm, no foul. A research project that I assigned to my students a couple of years ago was to look into biotin. People say that it grows hair. This is a really good example. Some studies show that it does. Some that are pretty well done studies. Some studies show it's useless. The only side effect known is it can screw up your thyroid panel. So if you are going to take it, you don't take it for a week before your blood test if you're going to go see a doctor for an appointment. So what you say to somebody is, look, I can't see that this is going to kill you. I wouldn't spend a lot of time talking somebody out of taking it. I wouldn't necessarily promise it's going to grow hair, which I see practitioners do all the time, and that's false. I think people should be aware of that side effect and decide if that's a problem for them or not. And then that's the end of the story. And it goes to this gray area where it isn't always, never, everybody, nobody, and making claims that aren't substantiated, but actually using some rules of evidence to tease things out.
Well, I guess it depends on how you define a supplement. I mean, some people talk about saw palmetto as a supplement. There's all kinds of herbal medicines that have some very positive effects. Mm-hmm. You're talking about vitamins and minerals, which are isolated, concentrated nutrients. Well, they cause nutritional imbalances, and they cause increased risk of dying. They promote cancer and heart disease. The way it works is that inside the cell you have receptors, and like for example, keratin. For keratins, you have about 50 different carotenoids that the human being needs that attach to that receptor, that carotenoid receptor. When you flood the cell with beta carotene, you don't have room for the other 49 receptors or the other 49 carotenoids to attach to this one receptor. So you cause nutritional imbalances, which increase the risk of heart disease, cancer, and overall death. It should be simple to understand. But if you give the fruits and vegetables in their natural packages, then they come into the body with all the other nutrients that cause it to work properly. But if you isolate and concentrate a nutrient like beta carotene, vitamin E, vitamin D is a very toxic supplement, then you cause problems. No, I do not prescribe them. B12 is the exception, but as Dr. Klaper says, is probably with its own problems too, but they're just not as severe. And the last effort people are going to make to condemn the way we recommend eating is B12. It's their last stand, because you cannot say anything negative about the protein, amino acid, vitamin, mineral, calcium, etc. intake, because our diet is so nutrient dense. It's the most nutrient dense of all diets, unless you believe, like my parents did, that protein and calcium are the most important nutrients. And you can fix that by understanding that there's never been a case of protein or calcium deficiency ever reported. So they are unimportant, the least important nutrients. If you look at the really important nutrients, they come from plants. That's where you get your vitamins and minerals from, not from capsules or shots.
Again, the vitamin B12, as Dr. McDougall was implying, the critics will say, it can't be a natural diet. You people are eating if you can't take a B12 supplement. But B12 is found in the soils and the water supply, when we used to drink out of streams, when we used to pull up unwashed vegetables and eat, and we would get the same B12 running through our systems that the deer and the antelope have today. But welcome to the 21st century. No one's drinking out of streams. Nobody's eating unwashed vegetables. And due to modern sanitation, the bargain that we make to have clean water, so we don't have to be treating cases of cholera and typhoid fever, is that the natural B12 sources have been cleansed from our diet, and it's the bargain that we make. But it's not that the diet is inherently deficient. It's just the concession to modern sanitation. So take the freaking supplement once or twice a week and get on with your life. Don't make a stand on it. It's silly.
Well, I want you to know that the doctors who work at my clinic, we're on a 12-day telemedicine clinic, that's the first thing they do is they take people off all of their vitamin supplements except for B12. So you can see how strongly I feel about it. That's just one more thing that people need to give up, believing that that's going to cause them good health when it doesn't. I mean, if something works, it ought to work. People who follow the advice that Pam Popper and Michal Klaper and I and many of you others give, it works. I mean, it's evident immediately. The reason we have scientific results published at 7 days. Oregon Health and Science University studied our program for a year. Doctors in New Zealand studied our program for a year. We have published scientific data. It works. I often tell my patients if they're not better in 4 months, they're not going to get better. Essentially, all problems that are going to resolve, I find, take care of themselves in about 4 months. Think about the last time you saw somebody who got in a bad car accident. How long did it take to heal their bones, their lacerations? A couple of months, 3 months, 4 months, 4 months. If it's broke and you found the way to fix it, it's going to heal in 4 months. Those of you who've been taking vitamin supplements for 50 years, waiting for them to work, stop waiting. The Cochrane collaboration, they looked at the multivitamin that my mom used to give me every morning with the orange juice that gave me indigestion. And they determined, the Cochrane collaboration, some of you know Cochrane Reviews, they determined that for every 1 million multivitamin supplement takers, there were 9,000 extra deaths. Causes nutritional imbalances. Don't be foolish. Get them in the natural packages.
What if the doctor tells you that you tested very low for vitamin D and your levels are very low?
That's just a gimmick to sell vitamin D. Vitamin D is one of the most misrepresented issues out there. I used to know where vitamin D came from. Do you remember? It comes from the sun, not from pills. And when you give pills in doses of 2,000 international units or greater, you increase falls and fractures compared to placebos. These are dangerous supplements. They cause nutritional imbalances. Vitamin D, lots of people are low in vitamin D. Why? They live outside of their natural environment. They were initially skin toned dark when they lived near the equator. And people who moved away from the equator were skin toned light. Well, there's been a whole bunch of migration. So as a result, dark people live up in the cities. They wear lots of clothes. They wear hats. They don't get enough sunshine. That's one of the problems. The other thing is chronic inflammation. Most people are chronically inflamed due to the rich Western diet. That fork and spoon is causing injury, which results in inflammation. One of the byproducts of the inflammatory reaction is a substance that lowers vitamin D levels. So the vitamin D level in most Americans is artificially lower just because they're chronically ill. The levels that are considered to be normal versus abnormal are contrived by the supplement industry. This is fraud. This is dangerous fraud for your patients. You need sunshine, just enough, not too much.
I want to echo what you said, Dr. McDougall, about this. First of all, vitamin D is misnamed. It's a hormone. It's not a vitamin. The medical definition of a vitamin is something that your body cannot produce and must be consumed in food. All right. So it doesn't meet that definition. The second thing is that this all started, and this is maybe a lesson for many things we could talk about. When people look at a correlation And before a cause and effect relationship is established, they jump off the cliff and start making claims about it. So the original thing that I think started this whole fraudulent thing with vitamin D is the observation that people who are sick have low vitamin D levels. Well, what somebody should say in response to that is, that's interesting, we should look into it. What people said is, oh my gosh, people must be, low vitamin D levels must cause illness. So if we give people vitamin D supplements, it will prevent illness. And then it doesn't take long for somebody to get the bright idea, because sales are soaring. You know what? If we give people who are sick vitamin D, it will make them better. And it was a few years ago that curious scientists, which are harder and harder to find these days, actually started looking into it. And they looked at a comparison between the observational studies and the interventional studies, and they could not make a connection. In other words, observational study after observational study showed exactly what Dr. McDougall said. People who are sick have low D levels. But the intervention studies, whether you're doing it prospectively to prevent disease or you're doing it as an intervention for people with illness, show absolutely no benefit. In fact, the only studies that have ever shown is any benefit at all, very small advantage for very elderly women bedridden in nursing homes. And that's not the vast majority of the population consuming all this vitamin D. There's one study that I think shows it better than anything else, and I use it in my presentations, and that's the one with the emergency room in Georgia. They took hyperglycemic patients who ended up in the emergency room, and they get, obviously, blood tests showed their vitamin D levels were an average of something like 13, and they went up to 28 as soon as their glucose levels stabilized. And that's the best illustration of exactly what Dr. McDougall said, which is, the illness causes the low D. The low D doesn't cause the illness. Get rid of the illness, the D levels come up. And then you've got to use real numbers, because it has turned into, depending on the lab you use, almost everybody looks deficient. Quest will show a deficiency for 100% of the people, for example.
Okay, so I'd like to, I don't know if any of you have a pen and paper, because I'd like to give you multiple questions to write down to answer. So if you, might be hard to remember it, so if you could write these down. And then I'd like for you to each take 5 minutes and answer these 11 questions that people want to know. So you only have about 25 seconds a question. Okay? So I'm going to give you all 11 at once. And then I'd like for each of you to answer these 11 questions before we go. You ready?
Ready.
All right, you, Dr. McDougall?
It's a lightning round.
You know, I'll do the best I can. I have a little trouble getting a pencil here.
Okay, so here are the.
I'm set. Go okay. For it.
So I'm going to read you all 11, write them down, and then each of you give us fast answers on these 11 things that everyone wants to know before we end. Question number 1, we want to know, a recent study claimed vegans have more bone fractures. Is this true? That's number 1. Number 2, what is your position on salt? Number 3, what is your position on smoothies? Number 4, what is your position on the new popular vegan burgers that are made from a variety of pea and similar proteins? The burger brands Beyond Meat, Impossible, and all the other ones like. Next, number 5, do you recommend all the plant-based milks, oat, hemp, soy, coconut, almond, cashew, flax? Number 7, what about eggs or egg whites? If someone, eats a healthy diet and they just want to have some eggs and egg whites. Number 8, what about gluten? Should we be trying to avoid gluten? Number 9, do you recommend statin drugs for some people? Number 10, what's so bad about having a little bit of fish? Fish seems natural. It grows in the ocean. Why can't we have fish? And number 11, what does a man do to protect against prostate problems? If each of you could take 4 minutes to answer all those questions, that would be great.
All right.
You want to go?
Go ahead, Pam.
All right. So you can find a study to support anything you want to say. I'm talking about the vegans and fractures. So you have to look at the study design, and more might be 2% more, and it's an outlier study. It could be sponsored by the dairy industry. I can think of 13 criteria to show that might not be accurate. Salt. Humans have salt taste receptors on their tongue for a good reason. We should have some salt. I own a hot yoga studio, and all the people, not all the people, the most common reason for passing out or having leg cramps is salt deficiency. So we do not restrict salt. Smoothies. Every year I assign my students in my research and writing class to find a study that actually shows that smoothies are harmful. And we have not yet had a student, I've had about 4,000 people take this class, who's been able to show that smoothies are harmful. The vegan burgers, this goes to a bigger issue, processed food and the plant-based diet. You can't live on it, but I don't think there's anything wrong with some of it. I mean, if what's standing between me and death is an Impossible Burger, I should open the champagne, enjoy my last few hours on the planet, and then I'll check out, right? So the problem is when people start saying, I used to eat a burger every night, now I'm having an Impossible Burger, that doesn't work. There's nothing the matter with the plant milks. I think, again, it's the method of use. They always show the glass of milk at every meal. That's ridiculous. Drink water, right? But if you're going to put some plant milk in your smoothie or stick it on your cereal or oatmeal, there's nothing the matter with that. I'll answer the eggs, egg white, and fish at the same time. We've not taught a vegan diet at my office ever. We teach people to eat a diet that can include up to, not exceeding, 3 servings of animal food, provided it's organic, wild caught, or doesn't include dairy. That kind of mimics what some of the blue zones eat, and we've been very successful with it. So but it doesn't matter. People say egg whites are better than this and fish is better than chicken. That's a ridiculous game to play. People who have celiac disease should not eat gluten. People with certain autoimmune diseases should not consume high gluten foods because of molecular mimicry. But the vast majority of people can eat gluten, and that's one of those frequent of the 6 things that most naturopathic doctors, and that's my training, claim that is wrong with people that isn't. Gluten sensitivity is one of them, although some people are. Statin drugs, it depends on the patient. You should use, in my opinion, the NNT to determine that. For a person using statin drugs for primary prevention, no heart attack, doesn't have familial hypercholesterolemia, the NNT is 400. It's ridiculous. I mean, it's better off buying a lottery ticket today. If you have familial hypercholesterolemia or something like that going on, the NNT goes down to a reasonable number, and the ratio indicates that you should perhaps take a statin. But for most people, that's not the case. The best thing to do to prevent prostate cancer is don't eat dairy products. Your prostate does not like dairy products. The risk that a man consuming dairy products regularly will develop prostate cancer is higher than the risk that a smoker will develop lung cancer. And I think, and the other thing that I would say is don't get a PSA test. And my good friend Richard Ablin is the guy who discovered PSA and the false diagnosis of prostate cancer is a plague. His estimate, by the way, I think he knows a lot about it. He's the guy who discovered it. And he wrote a great book called The Great Prostate Hoax. You got a 78% false positive rate on that PSA test. So we've taken the prostates out of 1 million men in the United States who don't have prostate cancer. So I would add that caution. Don't get diagnosed with prostate cancer if you don't have it. I don't know if I did it in the right amount of time, but that's my story.
John, you want to pick up?
No, I was gonna do it in order. I don't care. Okay, vegan bone fractures. Well, I'm familiar with a group in England that did this, and I have to know my analysis. My analysis is the vegans were much more physically active and had fractures related to trauma. The other thing you have to realize is that people in England who are vegans have a propensity to eat a lot of isolated soy protein. Isolated soy protein causes bone loss. So that's another explanation. Otherwise, doesn't make sense to me at all. Salt, I agree with Dr. Popper, we're designed to eat salt. Not too much, just enough, but you have to have some. Smoothies, you do not improve the nutritional value of a fruit or vegetable by hitting it 1,000 times with a steel blade. But most people can tolerate smoothies. As far as fake meats, they're a distraction. And besides that, when you say fake meat, you're referring to an ideal, which is meat. So somehow people think that meat is still the standard. Stop talking about fake meats. You need to supplement with starch. If you're going to really feed the world in this upcoming time, you're not going to do it on Impossible Burgers. You're going to do it on rice, corn, and potatoes and wheat. So let's get over this fake meat stuff. Plant milks, we use a little bit in our clinic. Eggs are for Easter. Yes. They're the most concentrated of all foods. After all, you grow an entire chicken out of one egg. You grow beaks and blood vessels and eyes and feathers and feet out of one egg. It is the super concentrated nutrition of anything. Overnutrition is why people are sick. Gluten, it's a dangerous distraction. There are a few people who have to be on gluten-free diets, but 40% of the population is looking for salvation with gluten foods. They're not going to find it. It's a dangerous distraction that keeps them from looking at the real problem. Planet Earth is going to burn in hell due to the livestock industry before we help the people with gluten or GMOs or anything. Focus on what our problems are, ladies and gentlemen. It's not gluten. It's not GMOs. It's the animals that we're eating. Statins, yeah, I take care of heart disease patients. I use statins, but as Dr. Popper said, only in high-risk people. Fish, hey, I love the ocean. I sail, I scuba dive, I windsurf. When I first started going to the ocean, there were lots of fish. Now 90% of the fish are gone. Those of you who think fish is still okay, eat up fast, ladies and gentlemen, because they're almost off this planet and extinct. And they have no nutritional value. They have a lot of methyl mercury, though. As far as prostate health goes, you get prostate cancer from eating the rich Western diet. Maybe there's some herbs that help, like saw palmetto. It's the food, folks. It's the food. So I hope you love the fact it's the food. Hey, I give you an extra minute there, Michal Klaper.
Thank you, but I really don't need it. My two colleagues just they nailed every one of these into the left field stands. Those are the excellent answers that I would absolutely agree with. And as far as the fish goes, we are clear cutting the ocean. We are strip mining them. If you have not seen a film on Netflix called Seaspiracy, it's a kind of cousin to Cowspiracy. I urge you to see that, and it will change your viewing on eating fish. It's time to let them off the hook and let the oceans heal. Everything else from the prostate to the plant milk cell, I'm in complete agreement with.
Okay, why don't each of you take 1 minute and make a closing final statement about anything you want to communicate to our audience?
Well,
I just want people to focus on what the three of us have been trying to talk to you about, and that it's the food. And that's where you need to put your attention, not only for your personal health, but your patient's health, and most importantly, the planet's health. We've got a world to save, and you can save it with vegan starch. It's the food with a starch-based vegan diet. Thank you, Michal.
Yes, this is what's hanging in the wall of my office at True North. It's the food, and the second line, it's been the food all along. And that's the reality of it. And if you've been struggling with your weight and your blood pressure, it's the food, and it's been the food all along. A whole food, plant-based diet will leave you lean and healthy and keep you out of the clutches of people like us. Go live your lives by eating healthy food. Get as much love and learning and laughter in the precious time that we have left on this planet, each of us. Make it a better place, and eat plants. Your body will know what to do with it, and you won't need a lot of medical augmentation from that. And it's all about love. That's what we're here to do. So don't waste time doing anything else. If it's not loving, don't even think it, let alone do it.
That should end it. I'll just add one thing, and I think that people are afraid about their health because they're not in control of their health. People are afraid of what they can't control. And people can control their health more than they realize. And one of the reasons we focus on teaching people how to read research and how to understand studies is because the real taking control of your health comes when you know what the decisions are in front of you and can make an intelligent decision about them, not because you found somebody else to listen to. And so Dr. McDougall referred to some studies you should look up, okay? And all of us have written books that are filled with studies that you should look up and read on your own. Because when you really understand this stuff, like you understand what we're saying and you see the studies themselves and you understand, then you make decisions and you don't have all this regret later on. And so I'm all for people feeling in control of their health, because without that, there's just not much else going on. And I think we all want to stick around. And, another thing I'll just mention is sometimes people say, oh, I don't want to grow old. I just hope I get hit by a bus. You know what? All the old people I've ever talked to who are sick, they want to live longer. So, and I sure do. Now I'm an old people. I don't like to think of myself that way, but now that I'm an old people, I want to live to be 100. So, and we can, humans are designed for that. So take care of yourself.
James, can we unmute every single microphone at once? Is that possible?
Yes.
Unmute every single person so we could say thank you.
Well, thank you, Stephen. It was fun. Well, thank you, Stephen. You did a nice job. You got a good group of people together. I can see.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Really great.
Thank you.
Thank you.